What is going on, good people? Welcome back to the Gridiron Uncensored podcast football show. And hey, we're rolling out. We got Big Ten previews. We were doing alphabetical order. We're bouncing around a little bit. This one, just because we might have some things lined up, and maybe we'll let you know more about that very soon. Either way, we're gonna roll on tonight. We got UCLA, USC, Washington, and Wisconsin. We're doing a 4-show. Trying to pack it all in because we got more vacations coming up. We got college football 25 coming out, so we got to get some gaming time in, and then of course we want to have time left for conference previews and all that other stuff. So we got 4 teams tonight. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it, Trevor.
Absolutely.
And first one up, UCLA. They come out. They've got an over under 5.5, and they've got a new coaching staff after Chip Kelly decided to roll on out. Oh my God. I think that shocked a lot of people, but it sounded like he was just done. From everything I've read, he just wasn't feeling it there anymore. Yeah. So honestly, I think it's best that it did happen.
Probably so. And he probably isn't because look, I mean, no matter what you feel about the West Coast teams or anything like that, regardless of whether they're Big Ten or Pac-12, at the end of the day, UCLA is still a rebuild process. Like they have been in kind of this rebuild mode. We all kind of thought that Chip Kelly was about to take that next step with UCLA until all of this drama unfolded with him, what seemed to be tension between him and the administration and the leadership at UCLA. And then it kind of started to trickle out that little leaks were happening that he's just over the head coaching politics, the politicking with the NIL and all this other stuff. He doesn't necessarily say that it's a bad thing. He just doesn't like having to deal with it as the head coach. And I think he's just at the point now where he's like, well, I could pretty much write my ticket. And he ended up going to a place where a former person that he helped bring up is now the head coach at Ohio State. So he's just like, shoot, I'm going to go do that. Just coach offense because that's what he's really good at doing.
Yeah, and that's something that we've noticed a couple times during this coaching carousel was Hafley moving on, a couple other guys, they're jumping to the NFL, they're changing because they don't want to deal with what coaching is now. And it's more of a general manager role, in my opinion. Yes, you can still coach and be involved, but you have to be able to delegate. You have to be able to set up new positions to deal with the NIL. And I think Chip Kelly's just done with it. So he's like, all right, I'm moving on. I'm just going to go coach offense. That's what I love, and that's what I'm going to do.
And there's a lot of aspects to this, the NIL and the collectives or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of things about this, and most of these coaches don't really want to have to sit there at fundraising dinners and things like that and deal with the handshaking, shaking babies and kissing hands,
That's right.
and not having to wanting to deal with all that. So, and I completely understand it from that point of view where they just want to coach ball, but at the same time, this is the sport. This is the change. It's adapt or get out. And some of them are choosing to get out, and that's okay. Opens up doors for the new head coach, and that kind of leads us into that. It opens up the door for good old Deshaun Foster to come on in and kind of help bring back UCLA to what they used to be thought of as, which was a really good football and basketball school. For a long time there. And Deshaun Foster, I like his energy personally.
Yes.
I know that he does have some football coaching experience, not head man experience, but he does have coaching experience. And I do think that if he's a good manager, it could work really well. If he has good base systems, but he brings in good assistant coaches and really brings in a good quality, what's the word I'm looking for? Good quality assistants. That's the word I'm looking for. So let's see. He brought back. I really like this hire mostly. His associate head coach and offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy. You guys may recognize that name because that man was talked in many circles as being one of the next NFL head coaches.
Yes.
So the fact that he is taking the assistant head coach role and offensive coordinator role at UCLA, I think speaks volumes to what Deshaun Foster is kind of bringing, that energy that he's bringing, and people are just wanting to be a part of. He's got Juan Castillo, offensive line coach, Eric Frazier, wide receivers coach, Jerry Neuheisel at tight ends coach, Brian Norwood, also another assistant head coach, passing game coordinator and safeties coach. Oh yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. Akaka
Huh.
Malo, defensive coordinator and inside linebacker coach, Marcus Thomas, running back coach, Tony Washington Jr., defensive line and outside linebacker coach, Ted Washington, strictly quarterback coach, which is, you don't see that very often on a staff, that you just have strictly a quarterback coach. Now,
Yeah, they're usually spliced.
normally it's a multi-role position.
Yeah.
And then Cody Whitfield to round it off with special teams coordinator and cornerbacks coach.
Yeah, what I've been reading on their staff and what people in the fandom think, they're pretty happy with how they've rounded it out, especially the B1G hire. I think a lot of people are like a little shocked, like, oh wow, because
I'm
like you
telling you,
mentioned,
like like the most of the people that you listen to about Bieniemy, it was very surprising that he chose to go to UCLA and come back to college when he was so highly thought of in the NFL ranks. That being said, he has yet to actually get a shot at being a head coach.
yeah, and that's why I'm like, okay, maybe he sees the writing on the wall. I'm not getting these opportunities that I feel like I deserve in the NFL. Why don't I go down there, show what I got in the college ranks, and maybe revamp my image? I'm not exactly sure if that's what he thought, but that's what
Yeah.
I could
But
see that happen.
what's the term they always use, Brendan? Restarting the coaching clock.
Yeah,
And it's actually what he's kind of doing. He's going to be the assistant head coach and offensive coordinator. If they have a couple really good, solid seasons, he could find himself at a mid-level Power Four conference head coaching conversation. You
yeah.
never know. You never know.
Or I mean, you could do the Michigan method where you're there for a year or two, and then you propel yourself into an NFL head coaching gig like
Also true.
McDonald or
Yeah.
Jess Minter. So anything's possible with this, but I feel like they do like what they're building there, and with building that, you bring the transfer portal in,
Yep.
and I feel like they had a solid little portal class. I know it's not great. It's not a top 10 or whatever, but you got to look. We're not just looking at rankings here. We're looking at
Right.
who they brought in and players. And they had a top 10 defense last year.
They did.
So
They did very well.
I know you lose players when you have a coaching change, but you're also looking to build a new culture, build a new, who fits my scheme. So they lost 17, but they brought in 18. So I mean, they're plugging in, they're replacing guys that they lost. And now again, that's not necessarily, oh, you have to do that, but it looks good. They're out able to get players in, and that shows that people are buying into what he's doing. They're excited about the energy, Trevor, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So that again, that to me lends to, okay, they're going to start building something here. Let's see. Obviously, maybe not in year one, but if they can keep this momentum going, UCLA can be back into that conversation of being a strong team. Really, looking at their team again, and how 2023 went, it was really up and down. Their offensive line was atrocious. Gave up a lot of horrible sacks. But with the new coaching staff, all this stuff, they have all the line coming back except for the center. You could see growth there. Maybe if all the weren't rumors about Trip Kelly are true, maybe it just wasn't there. The want to, the drive for the team, and that can affect players too, man.
Yep.
So I'm interested to see this UCLA team. I know they have an over under 5.5, but I feel like they could really maybe shock some people, or they could tank. I mean, it could go either way. But what do you think, Trevor, about this team going into 2024?
Well, I'll tell you this, is that I think the overall outlook, in my humble opinion, is looking good. I did notice that between the recruiting class and the transfer portal, I mean, they're bringing in 3 brand new quarterbacks
Mhm.
between their two recruits that'll be freshmen this year, Henry Hasselbeck, some might recognize that last name, and Carson Gordon. Um, Coming in. They're not highly touted. They're both 3-star quarterbacks. However, they also have a 4-star quarterback coming over from Washington
Yeah.
by the name of Demarcus Davis, 6'5", 187, very lean, 6'5". But I mean, they've got a quarterback room right now that should get you excited to see what these kids can do, and kind of see who comes out of the fall camp, summer and fall, or summer more or less summer camp, and just seeing who comes out on top in the quarterback. I would say battle. Honestly, at this point,
Yeah.
I don't think you can pencil in even the last year's
Garbers.
quarterback just right away, because I mean Dante Moore, he's gone.
Yeah, so Garbers is I feel like he's gonna be like the main guy, obviously,
Mhm.
what he did last year, and losing Dante Moore to Oregon always sucks. But like you said, they brought in guys from Washington, and like these are people that are gonna battle
Mhm.
Garbers and at least push him. And
Yeah.
I feel like last year Garbers showed that he could be competent. Uh, but again, you're gonna have these guys in the trainings, like you said, summer and fall, that are going to push and try to be the head guy.
Yeah.
But like you said, last year was kind of like they liked Garbers and then they pulled him out, put Dante Moore in, and then they went back. So it's just kind of like it just wasn't ready for Dante Moore, and I
Yeah.
think he saw that, and that's
Right.
why he left. And now he's sitting behind Dylan Gabriel, and he's like, okay, maybe I need a year, maybe I need a little time.
Right,
And
and
now,
I really like there's a couple recruits that caught my eye when I was looking at this.
yeah,
Quasi Gilmer
mm,
out of California, wide receiver, 6'2". He's a 4-star, 32 32nd best player in the state of California, 56 top 50 top almost. I mean 56 best wide receiver in the country. That's a good get. Um, I like his size, 6'2", 180. That's a solid size for a wide receiver. If he has some speed to go with it, I think there's definitely some potential there. They got a couple good linebackers, cornerbacks. They really peppered the different position groups quite well, and I'm curious to see, because I know you mentioned the quarterbacks, and I just it's so hard for me to say one way or the other with the new head coach, if he's gonna have maybe he'll be wanting to take this transfer from Washington and see what he does. It really is going to depend on the type of style of offense that they
yeah.
decide to run. Which quarterback kind of comes out on top, honestly.
Yeah, it's very possible, and I feel like you ride the vet at first just for some
Hmm.
consistency. But if this
Yeah, I
this
don't
guy from
disagree with you there.
Washington's good, you run with him. I will say though, like we mentioned, they had the top 10 defense. They lost a lot of production from that side of the ball, but after all the portal and everything else, they still have 70% of their team production coming back.
Hmm.
Talked about transfer portal. You said Demarcus Davis. He looks like he's an impressive young athlete. Like we mentioned, let's see if he can win the quarterback battle. But they
Yeah.
went out and got edges. Sharif Say.
Hmm.
They got Archipong from Miami. You're looking to replace these guys because you lost Lotu and the Murphy brothers, who brought up, I think it was like 20 something sacks last year, just from their defense alone. Now, one of the biggest things that happened, I'll say, was keeping Toya, their defensive tackle. He entered the portal and he withdrew it. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna see what we're building here. And
Hmm.
that's gonna help that defensive front so much, especially to help anchor these guys that are they're bringing in from the portal. So
Right.
defense maybe won't be as rough as we initially thought once all these guys started leaving and graduating, going to the portal. But they
Yeah.
did also lose some key players. Brian Addison, uh, Oh, excuse me. Brian Aston came in. Where's he at? I had him. We lost a couple guys to USC. That's what I meant. Kamara Ramsey and John Humphreys, guys like that.
Yep.
Um,
And the defense is still going to have to show out, honestly.
absolutely.
Because I mean, they have to because their schedule ain't nice at all.
It,
It's really not. You get Hawaii coming in, but then you got to go out to Indiana, and then LSU comes into your house, and then you got to go back over to Oregon, and or Oregon comes in. Excuse me. You go to. Sorry, let me reverse that. I'm reading this all wrong. You're going to Hawaii. You're gonna go play Hawaii, which is a nice little break. Then you have to go. Then Indiana's coming into Pasadena. Then you have to go out to Baton Rouge and play the wonderful LSU Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come home, then you have some Oregon Ducks waiting for you.
We mentioned a little while ago. We did
after that.
Hardest stretches. I'm looking at my notes here. And UCLA, top of my list. Hardest 3-game stretch. That is brutal.
LSU, Oregon, and Penn State. Good night.
And an Indiana team that we really don't know how. Like we mentioned in the last episode, how are they going to be? So no, this schedule's tough. You want to see UCLA come out and at least try to get a bowl game. Huge in a year one of a rebuild, but you've got potential. Indiana could be a win. It's a toss-up, just depending on how this team actually plays. Even if you lose a 3 on that stretch. Minnesota is a winnable game. Rutgers is winnable, but I think that's a little tougher than people might say. Nebraska, Iowa's going to have a very strong defense. It's a tough schedule. I think the over-under is pretty spot on.
It's going to have – it really has to be. But, I mean, it'll be very telling if they can surprise one of these 3 teams with a win. Like, I mean, if they do that, like the whole narrative about UCLA will change.
Yes, and the hype will continue into recruiting and everything else.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. I do like what Deshaun Foster's doing. So keep an eye on UCLA. Maybe not this year. Keep an eye on what they do next. I could see this as like a Wisconsin year, like this, because we're going to talk about them soon. And like Luke Fickell in year 1. Maybe a little bit worse than what Wisconsin did, but I see the energy. I see what they're doing. I like it. Talking about a team, though, let's drive on to a team that has a veteran coach, a guy that's been around the block. They had a rough year last year. Let's not sugarcoat it. You had a Heisman-winning quarterback, and everything went south. We're talking USC, guys. They returned 60% of their production. It's not bad, but you lose Caleb Williams. Okay, honestly, there was a fall portal exodus, and you lost your defensive coordinator, which honestly is addition by subtraction. Addition by
subtraction. Lost is not the right word. You're right. He was canned.
He was removed. And look, this is one
no longer required
with USC. I think this is a huge sigh of relief across the fan base. You have so much talent offensively and just the skill and the coaching of Lincoln Riley. You hate wasting a top 10 offense like they had last year. You hate wasting that on a failed season. And that's what it was. 8-5 with a Heisman-winning quarterback. You lose to pretty much every single good team except for Arizona, which you barely beat. And that was when Arizona was just turning the corner with Fafita. And you barely squeaked by Cal, 50-49. So you toss this defense out. You go get a defensive coordinator from a top 10 defense last year.
Mm-hmm.
And Trevor, I think you got more on him. I'm excited to see what this defense can do at USC. Now, I know, again, they lost Williams, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. What you got on?
I mean, USC? Lynn is a great. He would not be what you would consider, I would say, a grand slam for defensive coordinator. But I'll tell you this: for coming from a UCLA team that I would say most people slept on as far as their defense,
Yeah.
I mean, 90th in scoring defense, 72nd in yards per play allowed. Not phenomenal numbers, but you got to take into factor that the caliber of player that he's going to have at USC will be exponentially better. And it, they ended the season last year, which is I think pretty good. They currently rank 16th in scoring. They currently ranked at the end of the season 16th by the time from the start of the season to the end of the season. They they went from the 90th and the 72nd to the 16th scoring defense and the eighth in yards per play allowed. And that's the kind of growth that you got from 2022 all the way to the end of the season in 2023. And I think that is a phenomenal growth for a 1-year stretch. Just looking
Yeah.
at it from that point of view, it's probably one of the better turnarounds I've seen from year to year, going from one to that. It's a pretty stark difference to be eighth in yards per play as opposed to 72nd the year prior.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of USC fans should be very happy that he's on board because clearly his schemes were working. His coaching style, his play calling was working at UCLA. So if he takes that same philosophy, brings it to a bigger stage, I think it'll work out well for USC in more ways than one. Give their defense a little bit more of a break, more 4 and outs, give the offense, this high-powered offense that I would assume that they're going to have, a chance to score more points and take some pressure off of the team as a whole.
And that's the biggest thing is pressure, Trevor. And like you see what we mentioned with Iowa, their offense was horrible. Defense still one of the best in the country. Imagine what that team would be if the offense was, clicking. The same could be said for UCLA last year. That offensive line was getting bombarded, and the quarterback play was rough in between. But that defense still was really good. They couldn't do anything on offense. So imagine what this defense can do to a team. I know it's year one of implementing a system, but it's doable. I really do think it's doable. And if you do that with a solid offense, now again, USC did lose a lot of pure talent. When you look at the portal, they brought 17 in, but they lost 29. Let me double check that. My handwriting got a little chicken scratch. Yeah, 29. Making sure that wasn't a 24. But it's the 19th overall class. So they went out and they got good players, but they lost talent, man. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do with who they brought in, the recruiting classes that they had, because USC can recruit. I mean, they almost recruit themselves, and Lincoln Riley does a fine job of getting talent around them. But I'll say they've got some solid players in the portal. It's just going to come down to Miller Moss or Jaden Maeva, and can they lead this offense? Because if the defense does what he's shown he can do in a year turnaround, Trevor, like you mentioned, I mean, they could have a really damn good season. They have an over-under of 7.5. Anything's possible. And you got a lot of good defensive players in that portal. Easton Arnold from Oregon State, that dude's a beast. Nate Clifton coming in, he's a good sized defensive lineman. So I can see what they're doing, and I could see them having, I think, a more complete year. It may be the same record, just depend. I mean, it might be, but I could see it being much better than what their defense was last year. 116th total defense. It's got to get better. It's got to. You're USC. You've got to have a better defense. And honestly, like we kind of mentioned, is Lincoln Riley on the hot seat if things still go to shit? Possibly.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think.
I don't know.
When we start talking about the schedule, I think we'll circle back to that because let's talk. Well, let's circle back to like what we think a reasonable number is for USC, and then if they hit a certain number, how much the USC fan base is going to come after his head.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
was
Go
just looking
ahead.
at the recruiting class, though. I mean, it's
Yeah.
top 20 across the board. I mean, they got the overall rank of 20. Transfer rank is 19. Their composite rank is 17. I mean, altogether, a solid class between the transfer and uh,
Hmm.
recruiting. Not a whole lot of what I would say big splashes in the high school recruiting for sure. Um, but you know they got the number 4 offensive tackle in the state of Colorado coming in. 6'6", 300 pounds. Hayden Treader. Yeah, probably brutalized his last name a bit, but no, like they got some really good things. And oh, look at that! I didn't even notice him. Good old Portage Northern, Jaden Walker, linebacker out of
Portage.
Michigan.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so yeah, good for him. 19th best player in the state, 85th top 100 player in the country at linebacker, which is saying something because there is a lot of good linebackers across this country. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, there's some really good ones. Um, so all in all, I think they have really good depth players. I don't see a ton of breakouts, but that doesn't mean that one of these, maybe a couple of these, maybe freshmen get some time and just explode.
Yeah.
Because I'm only, we're just over the surface really with some of these recruits. Like, I mean, these guys are in and out. Maybe they're developing faster than the coaches anticipated,
Hmm.
and they get some more playing time. So I think overall the USC fan base should be excited, and they definitely have a good start to the 2025 recruiting class, uh,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah. And like I said, recruiting's solid and the portal's been solid. But the thing that scares me is they did lose a lot. Dorian Singer, Damani Jackson, Corey Foreman, Tackett Curtis. You lost Malachi Nelson, a former 5-star quarterback, to Boise State.
Mhm.
Mario Williams. I mean, the list goes on. You guys lost a lot of people. So we're USC fans. Let us know how you're feeling. When you hear this, because
Yeah.
I'm really curious. When I first saw this all these players leaving back in January, December, I was like, oh shit, USC's gonna be in some trouble. And
Yeah.
I'm not like that was I was like, oh god, it's gonna be a rough year one. But then they did go out and get some good folks.
They did get
Kamari
some good
Ramsey.
folks, but Brendan, I'm just super curious on all of these good folks, how they gel together,
Yeah.
because they're going to have to gel week 1,
Yeah. And the schedule, Trevor, is no joke.
game 1, right out the gate with
Lord.
LSU in Las Vegas, of all places.
Vegas, baby. That like I just
Oh, man.
USC promised me you're not going to come out acting like dogs on chains and shit like you did against Alabama, and then you go get dog walked. Okay, do you remember that? I'm sure you do.
Oh, my
Please,
gosh.
please don't do that again.
Don't embarrass
Uh,
yourself.
just go out, stand on business, like old Josh Heupel said from Tennessee, and go beat LSU week 1, and you're going to have. I mean, I'm telling you, the whole college football world is just going to be slobbering all over you. Go beat LSU week 1 and see what happens. But no, Trevor, like you're absolutely right. You better be ready. LSU, whoever the quarterback is going to be, you got to be ready. Then you
But
kind of get a break with Utah
yeah,
State, and then you go to Michigan.
you go to Michigan. But overall, I'd say that they have the nicer Big Ten schedule. They don't have to play Oregon or Ohio State.
That's true.
And Notre Dame is Notre Dame. But
Yeah,
at the end of the season, you just never know between both of those teams. I mean, it's a rivalry game, and
yeah.
it's going to be it'll be a dog fight between those two teams.
At least it's in
Um,
LA though, so that helps.
that's true. That's true. It is in the Coliseum. Always a great place to play.
Yeah. But no, I do agree with you though. You dodged a couple bullets there, but at the front end of the schedule is tough.
Yep.
LSU, Michigan, Wisconsin, which I think is going to be improved, Penn State, and a solid Rutgers team.
There are
Maryland's always
challenges.
a
There are
sneaky one.
challenges, and maybe even some surprise challenges here with maybe Maryland coming out and going after it. I mean, the away games where USC has to come back all the way to the East Coast, essentially like Maryland, for example, the Maryland game where they're coming all the way from one end to the other. There's some
Yeah.
potential, for lack of a better term, jet lag or, um, because
Yeah.
it's not from what they don't have a time for that game, but I would imagine that it would be a late afternoon game at best. I highly doubt it'd be a night game, but it could be
Talking about time frame. Look at the Rutgers game. This is going to be a Big Ten after dark effect.
on
This starts at
Friday.
11 p.m. Eastern. Okay, on a Friday night, baby. I mean, we're gonna be up. We're gonna be up on this shit.
Oh
But
yeah, oh yeah,
I just that wears on you. So you're right, Trevor. It'll be interesting to see how these West Coast teams deal with the Big Ten slate, but also the time changes and everything else.
yep.
Over under 7.5. I could see an over, but you got to be the quarterback's got to be on. I know the quarterback Miller Moss came in, had a really wonderful bowl game, but can that translate into the season? All the losses, all the new gelling, what's going to happen there? Again, these
Yep.
aren't projections; these are just previews. Kind of, hey, what do we see? We got people we're losing, we're bringing them in, coaching changes, that type of shit. That's what we're doing on these season previews.
That's right.
So let us know again if you hear this. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about it? Because obviously we're outside looking in.
Yeah.
It's different inside looking out.
So real quick,
yeah.
Brendan, before we move on to the next team,
Yeah.
what's a win total that you would think that would put Lincoln Riley in trouble?
I feel like it's tough because last year you had a Heisman winning quarterback, and quarterbacks can win you games that you shouldn't. Even if you're struggling
Right.
elsewhere, look at the California game. Like moments like that. You've got a new quarterback coming in. You've got a new defensive coordinator. I almost feel like that buys him another year immediately.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, unless they really get dogged walk,
if they go 6-6,
there's trouble.
That to me,
there's
that's
going to
like,
be a
okay.
conversation, and it won't be a pleasant one.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll get left on the tarmac, but looking at you, Lane Kiffin, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like that kind of buys him a year because obviously he's great on offense. He's won the Heisman's, all this stuff. Do you want to screw that up, and try to go find somebody else? I don't know. So
I just don't
like
think that there's a better coach of it that you could go get right now.
I agree.
mean, I know Lincoln Riley has had his struggles. Don't get me wrong, since he's been at USC, but the guy knows his offense, and if he can just get somebody that's better at managing and handling the defensive schemes, which I think he might have found a guy that could do that.
Yeah.
I think it'll lend to more success for USC in general.
Yeah, I wrote down in my notes the biggest person in the portal that they got is a defensive coordinator. So we'll see what happens with USC. Over under is 7.5. I could see it going either way, but it all depends on quarterback playing. You'll say that. I'll say that about any of these teams that are dealing with new quarterbacks. Speaking of new quarterbacks coming in, even though he's a veteran, let's talk about Washington. Will Rogers coming in. He's the new guy at Washington. Obviously, he was at Mississippi State prior, but Washington 7.5 is their over under. They have 40% returning production. That outwardly looks horrible. Same thing can be said for Michigan, but you look at that and okay, they still have talent. They're just maybe not starters from last season, whatever. Jed Fish comes in after a wonderful year for Washington. Nobody can deny that. It was a hell of a year. Heartbreaking game in the national title, but they thought everything was good. Their upward trajectory. And then all of a sudden, Alabama comes calling, and Kalen DeBoer heads down to Dixie, down Alabama. And they were left kind of like, oh, what do we do? Where do we go? Well, let's look in conference. And hey, what this guy down in Arizona, hey, he's doing pretty good. He's got NFL experience. He's coaching under Jim Harbaugh. Let's go get Jed Fish. He's done a wonderful job. and that's what they did. They went and hired him. He brought guys over from Arizona, Trevor, players, and I think they're happy with who they got at head coach. I
Yep.
feel like it's a solid hire. Truly, I like Jed. I liked him at Arizona and what they were doing there, and the scheme, the style
Mhm.
that he played. It's kind of a change up from what the Pac-12 is mostly, and that's why I really like him, and it fits the Big Ten style.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Jed Fish. I mean, look, it is what it is, and Kalen DeBoer make a decision that was best for him, and I don't blame him for taking that spot because he's walking into a really talented roster.
Hmm.
So, and that being said, I think Jed Fish is also walking into, while they had a lot they lost, it kind of let him bring in the guys that he wanted to bring, except he didn't bring probably the one person that he really wanted to bring
Yeah.
from Arizona, which is his phenom freshman quarterback.
Yeah.
But
And the word is there is trying. I'll tell you, that's the
I'm
word.
sure they were trying to be like, come on with me. But man, Washington's a weird animal right now for me to even look at because I'm
Yeah.
just like, I don't even know what to believe or when I'm looking at it, what to put stock in at this point.
Yeah. Look,
Because
I
I mean, I don't know.
I look at what I go straight to the portal,
Mhm.
especially in the new era of the portal, coaching changes, your massive roster turnover. You look at what they did, portal, they let 28 are coming in, they lost 30. Their 11th portal class, and a lot of that's just sheer numbers. I mean, they still got some solid guys coming in, a lot coming in from Arizona. I believe it was like 8. A couple guys from Miami, Fresno State. You're getting solid players. Ethan Barr, a linebacker from Vandy. And then, of course, you have a quarterback in Will Rogers, who's a seasoned veteran. He had a horrible go last year with a very bad Mississippi State team. I'm excited to see him in this system. You're not going to ask him to go out and sling it 50 times a game and hope to God. I mean, at least that's the way I envision the Jetfish offense is you're going to be more controlled, more lean on the run game. And that's where I'm excited that they
Mhm.
brought Coleman in because that was for me when I watched Arizona games last year. I know they had other pieces, McMillan, Fafita, but when I watched their games, I love seeing Coleman run. That dude got me going when he toted the fucking ball, man. That
Mhm.
like I loved it. So if Jonah Coleman can go in there and maybe not be the main guy, but be that change of pace power back like he was, I'm excited to see what they do. But you lost your whole offensive line. There are no starters from that I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong, Washington fans from the team last year, they all went to Alabama. They went out everywhere else. UCLA, Demarcus Davis, obviously, one of your future quarterbacks, guy you want to build on. He left. Davon Banks went to Boise. You're losing guys to Eastern Washington, Syracuse, and again, of course, Alabama, Ole Miss. You're losing dudes all over. This is a whole new team, and that's what's so hard about this transfer portal era to see who these players and teams are. I don't know, man. I don't know what the hell they're going to be. Just like Indiana, who the hell are you? What are you going to be this year?
Yeah,
So,
it's really tough. And to answer your question, there was exactly 10 Arizona players that transferred to Washington. And
okay.
I was starting to count. I was like, oh my God, is Arizona going to make me a liar just one episode after I said that 13 was probably the most?
Hey, I don't care if they beat the record. Whoever does, we're standing on that,
Yeah.
Trevor. Okay, we're sticking with what we said. But
But yeah, they had 10 people come from Arizona, which is, I mean, that's still a
yeah.
pretty good haul.
And
So,
of all the Arizona guys, I really like again Coleman and then Price Sock, the
mhm.
cornerback. That is a hell of a get. That's what you need, especially after you lose Jabbar Muhammad, and because they lost a lot of talent, man. I'm telling you, they lost a lot of
It's
talent.
a whole new team, man. And really, they are, I like the way their schedule kind of lays out because
Yeah,
it's from for lack of a better term, I call it a ladder or
Yeah.
a rung kind of
I
thing where you
Sure.
start low tier and you just kind of slowly are kind of creeping up
Yeah.
at like every game's just a little bit higher threshold. Obviously, Washington State, we don't really know what they're going to look like this year. They were kind
They
of gutted as
they
well.
were they were ransacked, man. But yeah, you look at, like you mentioned, Trevor. I agree with you. First 3 games should all be wins. Doesn't even matter. Those should all be wins.
Hmm.
If you lose one of those, you're in deep shit, and that's just putting it
Yes.
lightly.
Yeah.
Uh, Northwestern, they're an improved team.
They're
Rutgers,
always kind of a feisty team, though, that usually gives the bigger teams problems.
yes. So watch out for them. And then you've got Michigan, which if you pay attention, we know the offense. The question mark again is the quarterback. I think the line's going to be fine, but you look at the quarterback play. That's the interesting part. But that defense is still going to be strong. So
Yep.
you've got to be able to play that
And
game, and
yeah,
that's at Husky Stadium, and that could be a real fun game right there.
it'd be a really fun game. And, the three teams that I really kind of am focusing on this schedule are the old guard, I guess you could say, of the Big Ten schedule, and that's Michigan, Iowa, and Penn State.
Yeah,
And really, the key theme with this is how well can Washington stop the run
yeah,
and make the teams one dimensional.
yes,
And I think that's really what's going to have to be Washington's key in this season is making teams feed teams into their strengths or where they want them to be. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Where if the run is the strongest part, then they take that away and make the teams one dimensional that way. And I think that they'll do just fine doing that because I think you're right. Coleman will be a great addition and do well in the running back position for Washington as well.
Yeah. Uh, I do think when I've looked at everybody, I know they got Jaden Wayne, big body, edge rusher, guys like that to help on defense. But I'm worried with how much they lost. I mean, they lost a lot of talent from that run that they had.
Yeah, I'm
But
just I'm
I
pulling up
see
the
some
recruiting class to kind
optimism.
of see what they are
Yeah,
coming in with. I mean, they've got let's see, Demarcus Davis. We got the quarterback. I think we mentioned him.
yeah,
Uh, he's come. Wait a minute. Yeah, yeah, Demarcus Davis. Yeah, and then we got Pakai Fanu, which is a great get for them because of the offensive line that got decimated. He's a
yeah,
6'4", 265 offensive tackle. Probably is going to need to put on some weight, but he is out of California and he's the 18th best offensive tackle in the country, according to 247 Sports.
yeah,
So that's a great get. They got a Peyton Waters, also out of California, athlete that's 6'1", 170. Could be a burner. They've got those were the top 4 stars of this class. I mean, they had a 30th ranked class overall, 11, like you said, 11th, and a composite rank of 47.
hmm,
Still top 50 composite. And I think overall you can call that a win with the coaching change like
yeah.
they had. Um, and yeah, I think that Washington will be just fine. Just kind of stick back to the basics, I guess you could say.
For them, it's lean on the run game because you're going to have good running backs. You got good running backs coming from Arizona. Lean on Will Rogers let him just dink and dunk, control the
Yep.
ball. But you got to hope to God that this offensive line that they're piecemealing together is going to be solid, and then the defense after you
Yeah.
lost so
I
much.
think they should kind of go off of like other offensive lines that have done this in the past where they have set a good core group of like 8 offensive linemen that they just keep on a
Yeah,
rotation and just keep people fresh on the offensive line as much as possible. I
yeah,
think that is a recipe for success because you get experience to more than just 5 or 6 offensive linemen. You get 7, 8, maybe even 9 offensive linemen game time if they're at that level or at that point in their development.
even in this year, if you call it a wash, you have a 7.5 over under from Vegas. So I mean,
Mhm.
they're expecting, which kind of surprises me. Uh, I mean, I could see where you could get 8 wins, but To be honest with you, I'm not feeling it. But hey, look, rotate your guys. Get ready for 2025.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
this is a multi-year thing. It's a rebuild. So Washington fans, in my opinion, have patience. You could shock some people, okay, but I'm not counting on it personally. Let me know why you might feel differently. Let Trevor and I know this, because that's,
Absolutely.
again, we want to talk about this and see, it helps us down the line too. Why do Washington fans, why are they confident? Because I may not be as confident as you are. Trevor, anything else about Washington before we move on?
No, that pretty much covers it. They got a pretty tough schedule, but I think they can manage it. The end of their schedule is the roughest,
Yeah,
and that'll be the toughest test for them if they manage to have a fairly successful season up to the going into November.
yeah. Yeah, dealing with a lot of changes in the schedule between Michigan, Indiana, USC, UCLA, but then you got the beast in Oregon at the end, and
Mhm.
they are in fact a beast this year. Let's talk about Wisconsin, Trevor. Moving on, and this is one Luke Fickle's second year. They have an over under 6.5, but they almost returned 70% production. And what hurt them last year was Tanner Mordecai going down at the Iowa game. I mean, anytime you lose your starting quarterback, that's going to hurt you. Um, and but it started off kind of, the Washington State game. Cam Ward was going off. It was 31-22 on the road. Then they kind of started getting things rolling. I know it's Georgia, Southern, Purdue, but there was a bye week, and then they went on and beat Rutgers, which was a solid team. And then they were in it with Iowa, and then Mordecai goes down, and the season just kind of went boom.
Yep.
But then, hey, he came back for LSU. He had a wonderful game. They blew it late, and what I've been reading on, about Luke Fickle from year one and their blogs and all that stuff is they want to see him implement his culture. They don't want to see him carry on from what Wisconsin was. They brought him in to be different, so they want to see that and not play so conservative, which they felt happened a lot. And Fickle said that he even mentioned it. He's like, "Hey, look, I was a little bit worried about year one because you're going into a huge program with a lot of history. I didn't want to blow what they've built, but he's like, but I realize, I need to be me. I need to build this as my thing. So we're tossing stuff out the window. We're going more attack and being aggressive, hunter be hunted type. So this might be a really cool season for Wisconsin in my mind. Against almost 70% returning, they went out and got Tyler Van Dyke. You got a quarterback, and that's the biggest step.
I'll tell you what, man. Yeah, you're right. Tyler Van Dyke. They've got.
Uh,
I think they have the most upside right now. Sneaky. They're sneaky upside. Sneaky upside. But their schedule doesn't give them much breaks. To be
yeah,
perfectly honest with you, they might like first two games. Yeah, that's nice. Western Michigan. That's a cupcake game. South Dakota. That better be a win. But then you roll into, then you have Alabama come into Camp Randall,
yeah,
and that starts a kind of a little tough little stretch, I'd say. Alabama, then USC, then Purdue, and then at Rutgers,
yeah,
um, which is it's not the most difficult stretch, but it's the once again, Brendan. I kind of go back to the travel where you have Alabama come in, but then you got to
yeah.
go all the way out to California to play USC. Then
Mhm.
you're all the way back to Wisconsin to play Purdue,
Mhm.
and then you're out to New Jersey
Yeah,
to play Rutgers. So I mean, I know these guys are pretty conditioned and they're kind of used to the travel for the most part. But again, the West Coast travel is the biggest kind of, I would say, outlier to this
yeah,
season of the Big Ten because I would say that these guys don't have to travel like that
yeah,
until bowl games, of course, and like national, anything like that. But yeah, they don't. The West Coast travel is very curious to me, and I'm going to see. I'm going to be paying very close attention to how it affects some of these Big Ten teams for sure.
yeah. And I'll say I don't have too much on Wisconsin, with the changes and because they're going in year two. And unlike some of these teams we've covered where it's like, all right, they've had
Yeah.
a lot of changes, a lot of new players, a lot of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Fickle and the team, they're in year two. They feel confident in the offensive scheme that they have. They again, I mentioned what coaches are saying. They're like, we're not having coaches teaching coaches how to do things now.
Right.
Everybody's lockstep. We're in gear. It feels better, and they're saying that about the locker room.
Yeah.
And Fickle's one where he's gone. Okay, he's a good coach. So I think again, Wisconsin, give it a little time. Don't be hasty. I know last year did not go the way that you wanted to, but you lost your starting quarterback. You're building a new team. And I look at the transfer portal again, because that's huge. And I don't care if people hate it or not. Transfer portal is huge. You can rebuild a roster so quickly and you can plug gaps. They went out and they brought in 16. They lost 23, but they've got the 23rd ranked class.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe these guys aren't popping off the screen, but when I read their boards and I read about depth and guys that they're bringing in, they're really excited, obviously, about Van Dyke. I personally want to see how he does outside of Cristobal's scheme because I don't really care for Mario Cristobal's off, the way he runs a program, and
Yep.
I want to see how he does in a Fickle system. John Pius is one that they're really raving about on defense. They say he's an edge rusher. That's how he's classified. They got him playing at linebacker. They're really excited how he's going to come off. And then the other one from Oklahoma, Tawee Walker.
Yep.
They're really
Absolutely.
excited about him and how he can play with Ches Malusi or Malusi, excuse me, because they might. I know they lost Braden Allen. Okay, I know that. But these two guys, I think they're going to be a solid combo. You get a good quarterback in Van Dyke. I'm saying danger team. That's what I'm going.
Yep.
Excuse me. That's what I'm calling Wisconsin this year is danger team.
They're a danger team. And I'll tell you what, Brendan, with everything that you just mentioned with the transfer portal, I want to make a mention of this is that they also have the 25th best recruiting class this year. And I'm just going to read off the top five recruits, in my opinion, which are the top 4 stars of this class. It is the best offensive tackle in the state of Pennsylvania to start out Kevin Haywood at 6'6.5" at 300 pounds. D lineman Ernest Willer Jr., 6'3", 255, third best player in the state of Maryland, 21st best player at that position. Tight end Grant Steck out of Illinois. He is the 8th best player in the state, 21st best at his position. Linebacker, and that rounds out the 4th, but I also like this linebacker here, Thomas Hayberger, linebacker, 6'4", 210 out of South Dakota. Obviously, he's the best because there's not that many people there. But no, sorry.
Damn it, Bobby.
That's a shameless plug. I'm sorry. Shameless dig.
He had to say it. I'll drink to that.
Anyway, no, he's the best player in the state of South Dakota. And he's the 33rd best linebacker in the country, but 6'4", 210 at linebacker. If he can run even a semblance of a 4.6, 4.5, that guy's dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's one other 4-star that I actually really thought was a really good get for them. He is the 3rd best player in the state of Hawaii, and that is Anelo Lafale. And he's an edge rusher as well, 6'3", 222, which is I would categorize him as more than likely a speed rusher.
Yeah.
And he is the 26th best player at his position in the country.
Nice. And that's what you're looking for. You want to keep building that. And top 25 class for Wisconsin is wonderful. You keep building on that, and you keep building on the, showing what you're doing. This is a huge year for Luke Fickell. And you talk about other guys they brought in. Another big body linebacker is Leon Lowry from Syracuse. The dude is 6'4", 240.
So now we got the youngster, Thomas Harberger, 6'4", 210. And then that guy, another 6'4" guy. My goodness, that's a big linebacking room.
Jaheim Thomas from Arkansas, 6'4", 240. I mean, you know how Wisconsin is. We all know how Wisconsin wants to be. They have an identity.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that defensive identity as strong. They're going to be hard to beat. You change up that offense a little bit and get on Fickle's system. I'm telling you, this could be a dangerous team. Like last year, we said we don't know exactly how it's going to be in year one. This could be a 9-10 win team last year. Just transfer portal, all this crazy stuff going on. It didn't happen that way. But let's look at this year. What they're doing, what they're building, the identity is there. I think the only thing that I've read about from Wisconsin and their now it's their boards, people that they're, it's obviously going to be a little more biased, but they're worried about the depth on the offensive line. But again, Fickle did not mince words this year. He said, we're getting rid of the culture problem effectively. So he said, we're removing entitlement. To me, that means there was a cancer in the locker room. There's something that wasn't fitting. And if it's gone, he says we're ready. To me, that's strong words, and that means you better go out there and show out. Because like you mentioned, Trevor's schedule, it's not easy. But
No.
I can see you having a solid one. I know over under 6.5. Even if you get 7-8 wins, you go out and Iowa, we know they've got offensive struggles. If they're struggling on offense again, you got to beat Iowa this year. I don't give a damn how good their defense is. They can't score. You better go beat them. Go beat Northwestern. This is an up-and-coming team. Go beat Rutgers.
Yeah, exactly. Iowa, like Wisconsin, has to be more dynamic on offense. So not to go back and talk about Iowa, but both of these teams, Wisconsin and Iowa, are similar. It needs to have a bigger expectation of more production from the offensive side of the ball. Usually both of these teams are solid on the defensive side. Most people would say, well, I'm never worried about Wisconsin or Iowa's defense. But in this particular case, I'd say that Wisconsin is the more well-rounded team. So there is no reason that they can't beat Iowa in Iowa City.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the schedule real quick just because it's 6.5 over under. I'll say it again. You beat Western Michigan, South Dakota. Say you're going to lose to Alabama. Say you lose to Alabama. This is still, I know it's a different team. Jalen Milroe being there is chaos. That's hard as hell to play. Say you lose to Bama, you go beat USC, you beat Purdue. So that's 4 wins already. Go beat Iowa. Go beat Minnesota. Okay, now you're at 6. You split one, beat USC, you lose to Penn State, lose to Oregon, lose to Nebraska. Okay, you've hit the over. You're in solid position. Okay, and I still feel like they might split some of those. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this could be a solid year for Wisconsin. I'm calling them danger team. Be ready.
Yeah, they
watch out.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be a team to watch for, potentially a dark horse pick. We'll talk about that later on down the road when we get closer to that. But
yeah,
because most people just aren't talking about Wisconsin at this point. Let's just be honest. With Oregon, USC coming in, with Michigan coming off the Natty, Ohio State, what they did in the transfer portal, Wisconsin's kind of flying under the radar. And even people are talking about Iowa instead of Wisconsin, even though just because Iowa's offense was so horrendously bad, it just like, is it going to be better?
It's a talking point. It's immediately like, oh, well, hold on now.
Yeah.
They might be something that, look, don't underestimate Wisconsin, guys. I'm telling you.
All be there. They may go away for a season, maybe even 2, but they will come back.
Yeah.
It's just the way Wisconsin is. I've kind of mentioned it. I mentioned it last episode when we were talking about the Illini and everything like that. It's just Wisconsin's got that brand of just attracting hard-nosed, tough, grinded out players that just will fight tooth and nail until the end of the fourth quarter.
And again,
that's what you kind of have come to expect from Wisconsin.
Absolutely. And again, for the West Coast teams coming in, this isn't the Pac-12. Okay. I know there's good teams out there, and sometimes you'll have really low season, and you'll get that from some teams in the Big Ten, but even Rutgers, they've started really growing up in the Big Ten style. But even Illinois on a down year, they're still going to hit you. This is smash mouth football. you better be ready every single week. And you're playing 9 conference games. Get ready. Buckle that chin strap tight, boys and girls, because it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Trev, anything else on these teams before we roll on and call it a night?
No, I think that pretty much covers it for me.
Yeah.
Man, I'm actually really excited about the Big Ten schedule this year. It's just going to be so much
Me
drama
too.
and so much chaos.
I feel like I know people don't like the transfer portal, but I feel like it's really distributing talent across the league. I know the top teams are loading up. I understand that. But when you're
Yeah.
talking about middle teams and depth of conferences, looking at all these players switching around and going to,
Right.
Miami guys going to Wisconsin, Wisconsin guys going out to USC or whatever the hell is going on. I'm just making shit up and talking in general, but I like seeing what it's doing. And I mentioned about the ACC being deeper. I feel like the Big Ten this year has potential to be, I know they were strong last year, even stronger this year. I know they brought in a lot of good teams from the West, but even, teams that had rough years last year, they could cause some issues. So keep an eye
Yeah.
out. It's going to be an awesome season. What a hell of a year to have a 12-team playoff. I'm excited. We're going to get all that stuff for you down the line, guys. Playoff projections, conference projections, all that stuff's coming at the end of the summer before kickoff. Let not your heart be troubled. We're just going through and giving you a little bit of info about each team so that maybe you can tell your buddies at the next garage beer fest or party, whatever the hell you're doing. Maybe you'll know a little bit more than they do. So make sure you guys subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And we'll holler at you down the line. Next episode's coming real soon. Appreciate you guys. You have a great night.
Take it easy.